Hi everyone, and I'm back with another review. Other People's Money, Inside the Housing Crisis and the Demise of the Greatest Real Estate Deal Ever Made by Charles V. Bagley. This book was published in April of 2013 by Dalton Adults. This book has 416 pages, and this book only has 6 ratings on Goodreads. This book is pretty much about the 7th and Petertown Cooper Village in New York City. That housing complex was created at the end of World War II to create a large, sizable, affordable housing for middle-class families. The mayor of New York at the time, LaGuardia, he really pushed, to have a lot of tax breaks, a lot of deals for MetLife, which is an insurance company, to create this housing complex. And it was kind of interesting as, there are a lot of insurance companies that run housing or created housing complexes. And this pretty much describes the early stages of this housing complex, how everyone loved it, how the community was really tight. People just saw it as like an integral part of Manhattan. Then when people decided to sell it, it was a threat to the idea that there should be a place in Manhattan for the middle class. When they had this big deal to sell it, it was kind of a clash of people wanting just to make profit, and it was like with the big housing boom, MetLife realized that they could make a lot of money from it, and then the people who bought it obviously wanted to deregulate a lot of the apartments to bring in the wealthy clients. And this book also goes into pretty much the logistics of how this deal was made, the companies that got together to purchase this housing complex, and how they try to find investors from all over the world to invest in this deal. It involved pension funds for teachers, for governments. I think they went to Japan, Korea, I think Taiwan, and to get all these people to invest money into this housing complex. Of course, people were expecting a profit. So they bought the place, and so it's just pretty much one company that was running like the landlord, and they had never really done anything like this before. So they tried to make a lot of improvements, they tried to kick out illegal tenants, but then they ended up harassing even legal tenants. They just spent too much money trying to make improvements on things that never really panned out. And then of course the housing bubble kind of popped. They realized they were stuck with this whole thing that was not making any money, and this book pretty much described how a lot of people just walked away from this debt, and a lot of the people that they went out into the world to seek investments from, they just lost their money. Like the pension funds, they invested like $500 million into this deal, and it just kind of fizzled out. And the companies that went to them to get that money, they didn't really lose out, but they tried to invest, the two companies that, investment firms, I don't know exactly what they're called, they try to put in as little amount of their money as possible and try to get as many other investors to cover up the cost. And by doing that, they really minimized the risk, and they were able to just walk away from this whole deal almost scot-free. This book kind of describes, lots of class warfare, tax codes, the whole idea of rent-regulated apartments, what purpose do they serve, should the government get involved and try to secure a certain amount of housing in a certain place for a certain class of people. What does it say about, how businesses run, where they just, we just want to make a lot of money, but they don't think about the greater implications of what they want to do. This book, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I mean, it's good, it's very informative, but I felt that it kind of, all the information about all the different tax codes, all the different types of loans, and it even says in here that a lot of people who invested in this deal didn't know about all these different loans. There's mezzanine loans, and there's bridge loans. At the same time, these loans were like billions of dollars, and it's kind of weird and hard to keep track of, okay, Statcom, she's the one who was contacted by MetLife to sell it, and they had to bid for who's going to sell it, and then Statcom had to find buyers, and how they're just going to decide who's going to buy it, and even after this deal went through, the people who actually bought it, they had to find money for it. It just seemed really, really weird, and it was very unfamiliar for me, so it's very, in that sense, it's kind of confusing with all this information. It has a lot of numbers, but sometimes it kind of illustrates how convoluted a lot of these dealings really were, and you can kind of see how people lost track of what was really happening, and they didn't really think, oh, like, this is a really bad idea, and they were just gonna going with the flow of, like, oh, the bubble's gonna, they would never anticipate that the bubble was gonna pop, and they just didn't really think about the details, and the deal just blew up in their face. To get profit from these apartments, they ended up charging so much that no one would actually buy the apartments. The rent was above the average for those types of apartments. I think this book will be good for someone who, if you listen to NPR or like you regularly listen to Planet Money, I think that this book probably will be good for you. But if you're completely unfamiliar with this kind of thing, I don't think that this will be a good primer for you, because this book is assuming a lot that you already know a lot of these things, and you can follow a lot of this stuff. One interesting thing that I found that I actually followed in the book Tombstone, I followed all of the different Chinese politicians a lot better than a lot of these American investors and buyers and sellers. I mean, like, it has big names, like there's like Merrill Lynch, Bear Stearns, Goldman Sachs. I understood those entities, but at the same time they specifically named people associated with those entities and what they did, and it was really hard to track what everyone did exactly. And yeah, it's very confusing. I mean, this world is incredibly confusing, so if you're already unfamiliar with it, I don't think that this would be a good first book to introduce you to a lot of these ideas. Alright, that was my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Talk to you guys later. Bye!